Protecting the public can mean a few different things. I'll give you some examples. The public is certainly residents of a community and the types of notifications they need to receive. Emergency notifications for like an active shooter or inclement weather. Residents of a community also need to receive routine notifications like traffic alerts. More broadly, it's just really about delivery of government services. Now, protecting the public can also be visitors, where their need is temporary, but the organization sending the notification, it's routine. Visitors come and go on a daily basis. They're on a campus for a concert or a sporting event, or think of an industrial facility where you have employees of other organizations on the property to make deliveries. So that's certainly protecting the public too. And then one other example that comes to mind are the additional resources. All throughout the world we see where resources from other jurisdictions will come into a local area, sometimes after a natural disaster. Before we go any further, I realize some of you are learning about BlackBerry Ad Hoc in more detail, maybe for the first time today, maybe on this video. So we'll zoom out a bit and we'll talk about BlackBerry Ad Hoc. After that, I'll give you a couple of examples of how we're already doing this for organizations around the world. And that's an important note. We're not talking about something that's going to be available later this year or something we could do. Protecting the public through effective communication is something BlackBerry Ad Hoc has been doing for years. So I'll give you some examples of that. We'll also cover some requirements because government regulations tend to change pretty consistently when it comes to health and safety, and we certainly meet those, but we'll recover some of them. And then ultimately, we're going to really spend a lot of our time on demonstrating how the solution works. So we're going to demonstrate for you how someone opts in from their mobile device to receive notifications via text message. We're going to show how residents of a community can register for notifications, manage their subscriptions, opt in, opt out, all the things that would come with an account, and making sure that they're receiving the notifications that they want. And then lastly, we'll demonstrate how operators send targeted notifications, because it's not enough just to have the users in the database. We don't need to be sending them information that's irrelevant. We want to target the notifications to the right people at the right time. So we're going to demonstrate how we target these notifications, and then also how we can select mass communication devices so that we're not just sending notifications directly to the people, although that's very powerful, but what if they don't have their device on them? We need to be able to get to the sirens, to the digital signage, to the giant voice. Some of you might be familiar with the acronym IPAWS. We're going to talk about all that and more in the demonstrations. Let's get started. So now let's talk a little bit about what BlackBerry Ad Hoc does. It's all about duty of care and business continuity, keeping people safe and operations running during planned and unplanned events. We support over 1 million people through 1,000 organizations worldwide. And the reason why we're able to do that is primarily because we have trusted security compliance with more federal certifications and guidelines than any other competitor. So when it comes to secure, reliable communications, there is no peer. We're also designed for large, complex enterprises. That means that if you have an enterprise with locations all over the world, we can conform our solution to meet your policy, your procedure, that really complicated structure. Think of things like user directories, workday integrations. We can conform this solution to meet your needs. And then the flexible deployment models really make it such that when it comes down to a hosted solution or an on-prem solution, or maybe a hybrid of the two, we're able to support all of that as well. Lastly, and most importantly, when it comes to a solution like what BlackBerry Ad Hoc provides, permissioning is so important because we have to safeguard personally identifiable information. We can have enterprise solutions with tens of thousands of users, maybe even more, but we can restrict the permissioning for someone down to just a handful of users, the people that they have a need to know, or safeguarding, again, that personally identifiable information. Same is true for the alert templates. This is a very powerful solution. So sending out notifications to tens of thousands of users or targeting mass communication devices, we have to make sure that that's permissioned properly. So BlackBerry Ad Hoc, while scalable to meet thousands of use cases all across the world, has a very granular permissioning structure to, again, ensure that we're safeguarding personally identifiable information and making sure that the capability is in the right hands at the right time. Now let's take a look at the 5 modules that BlackBerry Ad Hoc provides as a solution, again, to organizations all over the world. And what's important as you look at these 5 modules, the 5 pillars, if you will, is that everything is done from one single user interface. There is no third-party application required, not another username or a password or something you only use maybe once or twice a year, hopefully for an exercise. But what we're doing here is ensuring that the operators who are using the solution on a daily basis are doing the same exact thing when that emergency strikes, so that they're familiar with the points and clicks required to utilize the solution effectively when seconds really matter. To do a quick overview, the alerts is notifying anyone, anywhere, on any device. And that's not just one-way communication. That's bi-directional communication, gathering responses from all of those affected users, aggregating them into a single report. Collect allows you to permission advanced mobile features for some of your users within your organization. Think different teams that respond out to an incident, see something, say something. They're sending information back to the control center. Collect is very powerful for those emergency responders. The account component builds upon the alerts component in the sense that sometimes information needs to be shared over the course of days, maybe even weeks. Something so significant that it's not just the initial response, but you're recovering from it, maybe like an earthquake. So the account component allows you to gain real-time visibility into your personal safety and status. Connect is a permissions-based network that allows organizations to establish connections with other organizations and then select the information they want to share with them. Situation Response is the last module, and that captures all of the modules into one critical event managing tool. It's a centralized approach to properly plan, manage, and even remediate the modern crisis that enterprises face every day. As I mentioned earlier, protecting the public through effective communication isn't new for BlackBerry Ad Hoc. We've been doing it for years. So in this example, you can see there's a refinery fire in Richmond, California. Now, this is part of Contra Costa County's solution that we've supported for years, over 1 million residents. Now, this is obviously an emergency that resulted in multiple notifications going out over the course of several days. There's a significant petrochemical industry in Contra Costa County. But we support them with both these emergency notifications and then the more routine notifications, because Contra Costa County is responsible for emergency preparedness and disaster management. So now if something like Contra Costa County is a little over the top, I mean, you're not trying to notify 1 million people, here's another example of a plant explosion in Kingsport, Tennessee. This is more in line with the example I gave earlier about visitors, right, coming to a campus or an industrial facility, where the need for the person is temporary, but for the organization ensuring public safety, that need for the organization is routine. And so here, not nearly as many people as in Contra Costa County, but for this plant explosion, we ensured that multiple channels, devices, were sent at the same exact time. So both personal and mass communication like text, email, phone, as well as those public address systems, those mass communication devices we talked about before, those were all sent a notification at the same exact time to multiple people to ensure the public was protected. Now, earlier in the session, I mentioned IPAWS, which is an acronym that's common to a lot of us. If you're not familiar with it, it's the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System. Now, it came as a result of an executive order signed in 2006, so almost 15 years ago. But the investment has been consistent throughout, and it is improved each year. What's key for BlackBerry Ad Hoc is that we support it. So again, from that same single user interface, we're able to target those users, be it employees of the organization, residents of the community, or those visitors on the campus or in an industrial facility, or even those additional resources. We're able to do all that and then some with publishing notifications to IPAWS. Now, a little more specifically about IPAWS, that supports emergency alert systems. So EAS is another acronym you might be familiar with. And in short, it's targeted to people based on their geolocation. So you might be familiar with some of these push notifications, like an Amber Alert, for example. Bottom line is BlackBerry Ad Hoc can absolutely publish utilizing IPAWS so long as the organization has met their publishing requirements working with FEMA. Lastly, iPause is often thought of government-only solution, like you have to be at the federal level or the state level, local or tribal. That's not the case. If you're a private organization and you have a public safety requirement, you can absolutely work with FEMA to meet the requirements to be able to publish to iPause, and then again from that same single user interface, your operators would be able to send notifications to iPause. One other example of a requirement from government that I'll provide, and there might be some in your region where you're at that you're more familiar with, but this is for the European Union. It's the European Electronic Communications Code. Now, unlike iPause in the executive order from 2006, this is being drafted and implemented right now. It's supposed to be implemented by June of 2022. So we have had many organizations throughout the European Union contacting BlackBerry Ad Hoc to see how we can support them with meeting this new requirement. If you're in an organization that's impacted by this EEEC, I can tell you today, BlackBerry Ad Hoc absolutely supports all the requirements, and again, for your operators, this would all be supportable from that single user interface. So now that we've talked a little bit about where BlackBerry Ad Hoc is already being used to protect the public through effective communication, we hit on the requirements. Let's get a little more detailed around what the solution looks like. Now, we've mentioned targeted notifications, and there are some examples you can see on the slide, but it's not just the type of notification, it's also the persona, right? So the customer is going to get a different type of notification potentially than the supplier, than the employee. So as we're looking at protecting the public, we're not just targeting notifications based on the type of notification, but also the persona, the type of user that we are sending to. The multiple devices, that's key. We're not logging into a third-party application or having to log into a different site to send for iPause. All of these devices are available from one single user interface. That's not just for operators, that's for users as well. That's the opt-in, registering. Registering includes updating your devices, your different subscriptions, and then it's true as well for the operators, being able to send all those notifications out to all the different types of users on multiple devices at the same exact time. Now that we've covered what the solution looks like, let's get into how it works. And we're going to be key here on first the visitors. So we're going to demonstrate the SMS opt-in. That's the visitor to a campus for a sporting event, maybe a concert, or the person delivering goods to an industrial facility. Then we're going to demonstrate the registration. That's a community resident, like the example we gave in Richmond, California, and the over 1 million users we support all throughout Contra Costa County. What's it mean to register and then update my information, manage my subscriptions, making sure I'm only targeted with notifications that I want to be targeted on. And then lastly, we're going to demonstrate what it's like to be an operator, actually log into the management system, this single user interface we keep talking about. What's it look like to log in, access the template, update the content, target the different types of users, residents, visitors, employees, as well as select those mass communication devices and send the notification out to the people that need to receive it when seconds truly matter. Let's get into it. SMS opt-in allows for a short code to be typed in to a number, or it can also be built into a QR code, as you can see here on the screen share. And once that's scanned and then the text message is sent, the user is now subscribed and has effectively opted in and will receive notifications via SMS as the other users do. Okay, the user registration is available at any time from any type of device. It can be a desktop, laptop, or a mobile device. I'm going to just type in real quick, first name, last name. Then I'm going to create a username and a password. And again, this can be done from any type of device. Once you create a password, you need to confirm your password, similar with other applications you're familiar with. You then have to confirm. Once you've gone through the CAPTCHA, you can then complete your registration by clicking Register. Now, it's important to note that the opt-in users can be sent this same link to register. So that is something we've done successfully for different implementations, is having someone first opt in for text notifications and then be sent the link via text, clicking on the link, which launches the browser from their mobile device and allows them to complete the registration. Now, when you're looking at this, in this case on our laptop here, we do have some quick links. If we were on our mobile device, we would be able to click the iOS Here link or Android Here link for the BlackBerry Ad Hoc app. So there's also a registration flow for the app as well to include as a delivery device. The first thing we're going to do is confirm our basic information has come over correctly from the registration, and that's correct. The username, first name, last name, and display name that we created checks. The user ID is an attribute that is specific to our database. The value is created at the time the registration occurs. So that is a read-only attribute, and it, in short, allows us to ensure that personally identifiable information is properly safeguarded. There's then a concept of managing my alerts. As we said earlier in the session, we'd like to manage our subscriptions. There's a couple of different things that we've seen with different implementations. First is the concept of opting in. So it's one thing to register, but then some would like to have a second step of opting in. Or, of course, if you want to opt out at a later time, you could change this selection. We're going to select yes. By default, it was none, so nothing is registered for an opt-in until it is selected by the user. As a note, if ever I change the alert opt-in from yes to no, I would then be able to auto-delete this user. That's important because over the course of months and then years, sometimes users can be kept in a database unnecessarily. So by having this type of attribute, it allows us to then run an auto-delete function on those users, making sure that the database only at any given time has the users in there that need to be targeted with different notifications. Next up, some of what we've seen is preferred language. We have all different types of language support. You've seen this in some of the other videos, hopefully. If you haven't, go check those out in some of the other modules where it does a deeper dive on alerts or account. With different types of languages we support, here's some common requests that we see for selection on the web portal. What this means is that the register user here selects their preferred language. That's then the language that they're sent the notification. As far as subscriptions, this is shown as a multi-select pick list. This is highly configurable, so if a series of checkboxes were to be more appropriate, we could support that. Earlier on in the session, we gave some examples about different types of notifications that can be sent to registered users. We talked about inclement weather. Certainly with the pandemic, that's a big use case. And we talked about, of course, active shooter scenarios or those types of notifications where seconds truly matter, ranging all the way from that down to more routine notifications like traffic. If there's going to be construction on a certain road, they want us to avoid a certain way or a detour, something that's more routine, not nearly as critical as, say, an active shooter. We can support that, and we ensure all these notifications are targeted to those relevant users based on those subscriptions. Here you can also see the concept of special event subscriptions. We've talked a little bit about sporting events. We talked about concerts. Here you can see something more generic if we wanted something for sporting event or if we wanted something more specific to a team name. Again, this is highly configurable. Whatever is most relevant to you and your use case, these attributes can be created. They can be made available to those users on the portal to then be updated during the registration process or at any time thereafter once registration is complete. They could update their account at any time. And then lastly, you can see here community event. That's just a sample. We're certainly not limited to just 4 or 5 values. We can add as many as you'd like. And again, it doesn't have to be a multi-select pick list. If it's more appropriate for it to be checkboxes or something like that for the interface, highly, highly configurable. And we can do all that during the implementation. As far as managing locations, you can see here a concept of a home location and a work location. You could, as it says here, type an address, a city, or a zip code. I'm just going to type in Cocoa Beach, Florida. So I'm typing in the city and then the state abbreviation. And I'm going to say that I work in Orlando, Florida. And I just simply type that in. And it will update with a lat long on the back end associated with those city centers. And if ever a notification was geo-targeted, and I was subscribed to that notification type, I would be sent that notification based on one of my 2 locations. If I wanted to be more precise, I could provide a street address, but as it says in the description, it'll support city, state, or even lat long or zip code. As we scroll up here and we look on the right-hand side, we of course have the concept of password management. So I created a password, or established one I should say, at the time I registered as a user. I can go back and I can edit that at any time. Ad hoc apps, I talked a little bit at the top about the mobile app and how this is accessible from a mobile device. And if you were on your mobile device, we have some quick links here for both iOS and Android where it launches the appropriate store and allows you to download the app, and then it effectively becomes another delivery device as the mobile app. For Manage My Devices, you can see here's just a sampling of some of the enabled devices. Of course, we can extend this out to other devices if necessary, but as a rule, we have 3 different phones, text messaging, and work email. I will just simply throw in a couple of examples here. You can see for the phone work, it's just taking my 10-digit number. We do send text messages differently than we send phone calls. It's a data device, so if that is the same number as, say, your work mobile number, it just needs to be populated twice. One is a voice line, one is a data line, and then of course email, pretty straightforward. I'm just going to throw in some other information here and paste it there. And at any time you need to come back and update your information, you can certainly do that. And as additional subscriptions can be made available, there's all different types of communication flows that we can support for registered users to come back and update their account information at any time. All right, now let's shift our focus to the notifications. We're going to pivot from the visitor or the resident of the community opting in or registering. And now we're going to look at what it's like as an operator from that single user interface we've talked about several times throughout today's session, sending a notification. It is critically important that we safeguard personally identifiable information, so we're going to restrict access to only those operators who have been granted that role and the associated permission, and then also that we only make the templates that should be available to them available for those mass notifications. Because remember, this isn't just going to go to visitors or those registered users. This is also going to allow us to target those integrations with mass communication devices to include iPOS and EAS. Let's take a look at how it works. These 5 sections in this alert template are going to be the same for every alert template that gets sent, independent of how significant or routine the situation might be. These are the... Now, we're not going to go into too much detail in each of these 5 sections, but I do just want to highlight a few important things that really bring together some of what we already demonstrated earlier or previously in this session. One is the content. So you can see in the content, it allows me to identify a title and body, and there's a handful of other attributes. Highlight, of course, the importance of the bi-directional communication capability. So we do have a response option in here. And then as you can see, I'm targeting the location of this particular alert in the Cocoa Beach area so that home location or work location that we updated earlier would be captured here. If in fact I provided that location as a user, it can be targeted now to each one of those users in that affected area by the operator. Again, from this single user interface. As far as targeting users, we're not limited to just targeting by location. In fact, we have 4 different ways that we can target users. We can target by groups, by individual users, by location as we just demonstrated, and then by an advanced query. We're going to focus on by groups to just quickly identify the organizational hierarchy. Here I have for you just a generic layout of a hierarchy for an organization. This, of course, can have sub-organizations like a production underneath operations, or underneath sales, we can have account executives. Most importantly, though, here in these groups, we go back to those same things that we saw earlier. Alert subscriptions, we talked about public health, traffic, weather, security. Those selections made by the users on that portal as registered users are then targeted by simply a checkbox here. If I signed up for public health alerts or traffic alerts as an operator now to send notifications to those users, all I need to do is check the box. And then for, of course, those SMS opt-in users we talked about, there's those same special event subscriptions. We can do something as specific as a team name or a particular concert venue. We could be more generic, like a sporting event or a community event. As mentioned earlier, we're not limited to just 4 selections. We can have as many as you'd like, but this is just a sampling of the types of notifications that can be sent to those users. Again, ensuring that we're targeting relevant users with those notifications they've signed up to receive. Lastly, all of these alerts can be sent in that preferred language, again, bringing in all of that information updated by those users so that it's then targetable by an operator, all from one single user interface. Moving on from target users, I want to talk a little bit about mass devices. So you can see here from the same single user interface some examples of mass devices. Integrations, for example, with a cable TV scroller, digital signage, kiosks, things like that. All of those are integrations we can support, and alerts can be sent to those devices at the same time as alerts are sent to users. We talked a little bit earlier on about iPause. To be more specific, we have a common alerting protocol that we support. So if you have met all of your requirements as a publisher, that iPause device, as you see listed here in the alert template, can be made available for your organization. Again, very important to note that we also take a very granular approach to permissioning, so we ensure not just that the device is available and on the template, but we ensure the right people have access to it because it's very powerful. In addition to the common alerting protocol, some of the other examples are going to be your non-weather emergency messages. You have emergency alert system. All of these are presented to operators as devices that can be selected at the same time they're targeting users for a notification. So at the same time as we're sending multiple people on multiple devices the same exact message, we can do that for different mass communication devices. And then lastly, just to round it out, there's one more example of an integration, in this case with a digital signage. And then of course, social media. The example we have here is Twitter. So all throughout the session, we've talked about the importance of doing everything from one single user interface. This really is just driving that home and showing you from an operator's perspective how valuable that can really be when seconds truly matter.